Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Ethereum, the overvaluation reaccumulation phase of a lifetime, part 4. If you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, we've been following this for several weeks now. We've been discussing this theoretical overvaluation region where we know that the entire market is extended. Okay, we know that the market is extended, but that doesn't mean that we can't have another leg up. In the last market cycle, we had several periods of significant overextension, but it did not stop Ethereum from continuing higher later on. For instance, we had a level of extension here where we moved off the fair value from when we left the fair value. We moved off of it 3,000%. And yes, we had a correction. Yes, of course, we had a correction. That was a substantial correction, a modest 70% correction. But it did not stop us from continuing from that point on, taking us up another 1,100% against the US dollar. So we know that Ethereum, when it forms these mountain ranges, it can stay in this sort of overvaluation territory for a long time. I don't personally think that Ethereum will return to this regression band for quite a while. I don't know exactly when, but if history is any indication, the time between leaving the band from here and then re-entering it was about 287 days, and then from here to here was about 630 days. And so far, we last touched it back over in November, and we've only been out of it for 126 days. So I think that it's going to be quite a while before we go back to it. So I do not anticipate, an immediate capitulation back to the regression band. Although if we ever did get it, then I would consider it an accumulation phase of a lifetime, right? Not an overvaluation phase, or overvaluation reaccumulation phase of a lifetime. So what we want to look at in this video is we want to look at several different areas of overextension where we could be headed. One thing I think is interesting is if you take the natural log of the price divided by the 20-week moving average. We showed this with Bitcoin not too long ago, but if you look at this metric right here, the log of the price, the natural log of the price divided by the 20-week moving average, you get something that looks like this for Ethereum. And the reason why this is interesting is because we know that Bitcoin, when we look at Bitcoin's same metric, we see that each cycle, generally speaking, the extension from the 20-week moving average tends to drop. Okay, so we might expect the same thing for Ethereum, that the overextension from the 20-week moving average should drop over time, meaning that each sub-cycle peak or cycle peak will probably be not as far extended as prior cycle peaks or sub-cycle peaks from the 20-week moving average. And so we might use this line not as something that will definitively tell us where a local top could be, but where a theoretical upper bound could be. And so one thing to consider is if we sort of just look at our extension from the 20-week, when we started moving above it last March, we've been steadily moving up. In fact, it's kind of an interesting trend here that, despite the fact that we've had all these moves back to the downside and whatnot, where we've sort of regrouped, the 20-week moving average for Ethereum is still at $1,075, and we're currently sitting at $1,871. And so the extension of Ethereum from its 20-week moving average has been steadily climbing. Even when it has corrections, it's been steadily climbing. So it's still being further and further extended from the 20-week moving average if you measure each corrective part of the Ethereum price with respect to its 20-week moving average over the last year. So with that in mind, if we were to go to the top of this in, say, the next month or two, where could it theoretically put Ethereum? Now, I don't know how long it would take us to get there, or if we will even go there, but let's somewhat speculate on the idea of us going to that level. So if we were to bounce and the price of Ethereum were to go up to this level, let's say by April or May, it's going to depend on where the 20-week moving average is for us to get an idea of what that level of overextension from the 20-week moving average could be. Right now, the overextension or the 20-week moving average is $1,075. However, we do know it's moving up relatively quickly. In a few weeks, the 20-week moving average could be a lot higher than that. And if we sort of just zoom in to see how quickly it has been moving up, let's just take a quick look. So we know right now it's 1,075. If we go back 1 week, it was about 1,022. So right now it's moving up by about $50 a week. So in 3 weeks, the 20-week moving average will be closer to maybe a little over $1,200. So if we were to take the natural log of the price over $1,200 and set it equal to a theoretical move to the upside or the downtrend up here, we would set that equal to 1.12. Okay, now if we do that just for you know, some dubious price speculation, well, that would actually put us at well over around $3,600, $3,700 or so. So that would be quite a move by Ethereum. Now, is a $3,600 Ethereum theoretically possible this early? I think it is. I'm not saying that it's definitively going to happen, because there's a decent probability that it doesn't, and I probably would take some profits off the table before that level. But you know, if you come over here and we put on, say, our regression rainbow for Ethereum, we can recognize that there are some similarities potentially with the regression rainbow for Ethereum and the one we have with Bitcoin. The one we have with Bitcoin, we have a lot more history for, so I think it means a lot more. But we can see that more or less each cycle peak does not make it to the prior regression band of the prior cycle. So let me show you what I mean by that. So, for instance, with Bitcoin, the first cycle peak was in this red regression band, the next one was in this purple one, and then this one dropped down a couple more as well. So neither peak has been able to make it to prior regression bands. And I think there's a decent chance that we're currently experiencing a double peak cycle like the one we had in 2013. Obviously, it's too early to say yet. It will depend on how high Bitcoin flies before a substantial correction. For instance, if we just go straight to, like, you know, 1 to 200K in the short term, then it's hard to imagine that just being the first of a smaller bubble before a much larger bubble. But if we correct before that level, maybe we correct, you know, at 70K, 60K, 80K or something, 90K, and we have a substantial correction, maybe like a 50% correction or something, then we could imagine Bitcoin going through a theoretical double peak cycle. But if you take this sort of analysis where we're dropping down each of these major moves, and we go back and look at Ethereum, we would speculate that, okay, we're probably not going to be able to make it up here again, maybe not even to this one, but I do think that these two are on the cards for sure. And to give you an idea of where those currently are, the bottom one, so this one goes all the way up to just under $3,000 now, and this one would take us all the way up to just over $5,000. So I do think that the orange and purple regression bands for Ethereum are in the cards this market cycle. Whether we're able to make it there in the short term or not is obviously anyone's guess. Okay, we of course, I of course will get the questions of, well, why are you calling it an overvaluation reaccumulation phase of a lifetime? And just as a reminder, the reason is because we cannot in good faith call this an accumulation phase of a lifetime without that caveat or the disclaimer of it being somewhat overvalued in terms of the fair value, because we called this the accumulation phase of a lifetime and we called this the reaccumulation phase of a lifetime when we were there. So we can't look at this and also call it the accumulation phase of a lifetime, because it simply would not make sense to say that it can also be you know, the risk reward is not nearly as attractive as it was over here. When we were at $200, we were talking about a theoretical 5-figure Ethereum for this market cycle, potentially taking us to $10,000. So buying it at $200 just seemed like such a huge win. Buying it near $2,000, while I do maintain there's still a lot of potential upside, I think the potential upside from here for the duration of the market cycle could be limited to a modest 5x, if that. Whereas when it was over here, I was more so limiting it to a potential 50x. So this is the reason why I'm saying this would be considered more, say, an overvaluation reaccumulation phase rather than just the reaccumulation phase. So I hope that makes sense. Now we look at the Ether Bitcoin valuation, it's more or less the same, right? We contend that each and every time I talk about Ethereum, that as long as Bitcoin is maintaining itself in price discovery mode, putting in new all-time highs, or volatility on Bitcoin staying high, Ethereum Bitcoin is more likely to bleed than not bleed. And of course, we just put in a new all-time high. Now, in any given day or any given week, we could see Ethereum surge against Bitcoin, but I think that we would like to see Bitcoin volatility decisively calm down for a week or two at least before we can necessarily see a sustained move of the Ether Bitcoin valuation back up to the top of this channel. Now, if we went back up to the top of the channel, let's say by the end of April or early May or something, we might be looking at an Ether Bitcoin valuation of approximately 0.053. Now, if we do go to 0.053 and the Bitcoin valuation is, say, 60K, then that would put Ethereum at just over $3,000. I think the obvious target right now for Ethereum is not 2K, it would be 3K. 2K is one of those things that, you know, we're sort of sitting on the cusp of, and I think whenever Bitcoin volatility calms down, Ethereum will be quickly move over 2K as long as Bitcoin doesn't capitulate. But we've already broken 2K, right? So breaking 2K again isn't going to necessarily be something to get out of bed for. I think the more obvious levels would be, say, $2,500 and then $3,000. And once we get to $3,000, then we might want to look towards $4,000 and $5,000. But the same thing applies, right? Your risk reward is going to decrease each and every week that Ethereum's moving up. I mean, it's just common sense, right? I mean, I know people just want to think that these things are just going to go up forever, and they can go up for a long time, and I'm a huge Ethereum bull. But the higher Ethereum goes, right, the higher it goes, then the less attractive our risk reward will be on that asset, because it's already up 10x. You know, if it goes to $4,000 and we're up 20x from, say, the accumulation phase of a lifetime. By the way, it would be up more from say, the bottom. I mean, currently it's up over 20x already. So if it went to $4,000, we'd be looking at a 40 to 50x move already this cycle. So it's not to say that Ethereum can ultimately put in better returns this market cycle. It's just that I would start to be wondering, okay, you know, we've been moving up for quite a while. At what point are we going to actually get one of a more substantial correction that might take us back to the 20-week moving average? You know, this is a correction right here, a 70% correction that took us back to the 20-week moving average. To give you an idea of how scary that would be for people, if we were to drop to the 20-week moving average today, it would only be about a 46% correction. So we need to consider the fact that, or at least from the top, we need to consider the fact that there will be corrections along the way. We're just sort of hoping that Bitcoin hangs on to its current valuation or turns higher and then sort of hangs on for a while so that Ethereum can continue to shine. If you look at Ethereum's monthly valuations, it generally has just been moving up. So, you know, if we just sort of tune out the noise and just say, okay, well, this was a 7.5% move in October, followed by a November move of 59%, and then in December of 20%, in January of 78%, good old Ethuary, which we planned for 4 months. Then we had February 8%, and so far this month, despite the fact that it seems like Ethereum hasn't done much, it's still up 31%. And this would be, if we close this in the green, this would be 6 green monthly candles for Ethereum in a row. Okay, so that would be a fairly substantial move. So this is our 4th video detailing the idea of Ethereum being in the sort of this overvaluation reaccumulation phase. I will contend that anything between $1,000 to $2,000 for me would be considered the overvaluation reaccumulation phase. Okay, if it's between 1 to 2K, that's sort of where I would see it, at least in the short term. If a year passes and we're still there, then I might say, okay, we're sort of back into the risk adjusted returns are a little bit more attractive now. But hopefully this analysis is useful, and hopefully we will see Ethereum surge past 2K in the not so distant future. Of course, this will be contingent on Bitcoin. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Altcoin season sale. You can find a link to that in the description below. We'll leave that open for a couple more days. Make sure you guys check it out. You get access to the weekly reports and videos, the TradingView indicators, the risk dashboard, the Into the Cryptoverse app with the risk levels, the weekly reports and videos, and more. Make sure you guys check it out. You can find a link to the Altcoin season sale in the description below. At the very least, subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 250,000 subscribers. Thank you guys for subscribing. It means a lot. Turn on your notifications, give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.